Alright, today let's take a look at this new Brass Smith Lyman powder measure. Uncle Jim has already done a breakdown and real good product evaluation on it. Showed you all the parts and pieces and how to clean it, so I'd start over there. You can get everything down just right about that. Today I just want to look at how well it will perform using a tough powder meter, something like, you're probably all familiar with Unique, how hard that is to meter. And well, 700X is one of my favorite pistol powders because it's so clean, makes a lot of power, very useful powder. And so I call that kind of a tough pistol powder to meter. And then we're going to use some tight group, which is, I guess you can compare it to like salt. It meters really well. Now, I do want to say a couple things here. All these test numbers that you see have been derived by my own method of tossing powder. And the way I do that is I'll go up rather abruptly. You can hear it smack when it hits. It causes vibration. It also causes the powder to fill that metering hole a little bit better. Then when I take my powder, I'll do a double tap at the bottom and I'll leave this powder throw discharged with the handle down. The reason for that is if I don't do that and I leave it like this, and then any other bench vibration that's going on is constantly packing that hole tighter and tighter, so I'm going to get a heavier throw. So to avoid that, I just leave it in the discharged position. The other thing I'd like to say is that I like this metering assembly here. It's got big wide divisions on it. There's plenty of space in here to meter in and out before you have to adjust this rod. It's just that this is really heavy. And so you'll notice, you probably see this little silver thing. That's a 405 grain slug I had to whittle down and press into this knob. Otherwise, you see how it's just almost perfectly balanced. I'd rather have this knob as the heavy end. Otherwise, if you don't put something in this knob here, this thing will pull itself like that automatically just as soon as you turn it loose. So that's a drawback. Other than that, it's a well-made little measure. I like it. I think I'm going to get along real good. Let's look at the numbers on these things, okay? Before we get to the numbers, I forgot to mention, we're going to compare this new measure to a Hornady, they call it a bench rest model. It's a real nice measure. It does a pretty doggone good job on just about everything. It's got a little micrometer. This is an older model, but it's the same thing as you get today. The other one will be this, stand up boy, Lyman 55. It doesn't have a hole in it. It's got a rectangular slot that you adjust, so you have to learn how to use this measure. It's got two different levels of slots that you can adjust, one for rough meter adjustment and the other one for fine tuning it. This is my favorite on the turret. I'm hoping that this new Lyman can ride that turret too. We'll see. But these are the two we're going to compare all the numbers to. Alright, now we'll get to the numbers. Something else I should mention is when I fill the hopper here, I'll wipe each one of them down with a dryer sheet, knock off any static before I start filling it. But when I do fill it, I'll fill it up a little more than 2/3, and then I'd take the plastic jar and I'd tap, 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 and I'd watch that powder settle because it's going underneath this baffle. And it's filling the compartment down here, and all this powder is settling, so it's just getting all those little tater chips on a tough powder kind of flattened out so that they'll meter a little bit better. So each one of them got, look at that handle going back up, you dirty bird. Now I'll settle that powder before I start throwing. If you don't settle your powder, you'll get light throws to start, and then while you're running your measure, that'll be settling it, and progressively all throughout 100 throws or however many you're filling into your cases, it'll get progressively higher and higher, and then it'll taper off, and then the percentages will start running correctly, like I am going to show you on the numbers over there. All right, there's our two powders we're going to test with. Tight group on the left, you can see are very small little granules there. Real good powder to work with. Then the 700X, there's its granules. They're pretty much larger. They look a lot like Unique. This is a rough one. It's like trying to meter tater chips. They just don't fall in that hole real good. So there's our two test subjects there. All right, this first set of numbers is going to be for the Lyman Brass Smith tight group, 2/3 full hopper, using a baffle with my typical throw. The next one is lock and load bench rest measure. Same stats on how full we put that hopper. Same thing with a baffle. The third one is the Lyman 55. Same thing on the stats on it. Now, this is the clear winner right here, the Brass Smith. Then it was the number 2 here, bench rest, and Lyman came in number 3. When I go to adjust these things, I'll do 10 throws and weigh them right here on this bottom line, and it gives me an idea of where I need to set this up. Where am I pointing? Right here, this number spread to make these recordings. And then as I throw each one and weigh it, I'll put a dot above whatever particular grain it was. Here you can see we got a 3/10 spread overall, top to bottom. 5.0 seems to be the setting for this measure. So what happens after I'm done throwing them, and hold this camera still, that's a little better. 24 of them, 24 throws came out at the 5. 3 throws came out at 4.9. 6 throws came out, is that a 6? No, 10. 10 throws came out at 5.1. That's an awesome spread. So that represents throwing a box of ammunition. So 65% of them come out right on the money. 8% came out a tenth of a grain low. 27% came out a tenth of a grain high. So what does that mean? Well, it means if you load a box of ammo, 32 out of 50 are going to be right on the money. And then what have I written here? Oh, a tenth grain low in that circle, there's 4. So 4 of them are underloaded by a tenth of a grain, and 13 of them are overloaded by a tenth of a grain. This is about as outstanding as I've ever seen. That's just an awesome performance. But that's the easiest powder on the bench to measure. All right, the bench rest, 23 out of 50 came out right on the money. 10 of them were a tenth of a grain low, and 17 of them were 2/10 high. So statistics wise, get over here, 46% of them came out right on the money. 20%, look over the camera, yeah, 20% of them came out low, and 34% of them came out high. So that's, you know, like looking at a box of bullets that you just loaded. 23 out of 50 are right on the money, 10 are low and 17 are high. But that's a pretty good spread. That's only a 4/10 spread top to bottom there. Then the old Lyman 55, it came out 23 out of 50, the same as the bench rest measure, were perfect. 10 of them were low and 17 were high. I mean, that's identical to the test on the bench rest, except for one thing. There was a 5/10 spread on this one, whereas the bench rest had a 4/10 spread. So if I did this test again, probably I'd get the same result. Maybe I wouldn't. Maybe it'd be the 55 came in second. But you can see in practical terms how many of that box of bullets are coming out exactly the way you want them. All right, so let's look at the numbers on the hard powder. Now here's the powder that was tough. The Lyman 55 came out the winner. It's number 1. Number 2 was Lyman Brass Smith. The third measure was the bench rest by Hornady. All right, now you can see by all these little dots here how the throws pile up. It's kind of like watching a skyscraper get built. The dots will go all back and forth, but they keep filling as the more you throw. In both of these, I threw 50 rounds, 50 throws, and then because this bench rest measure had such a spread on it, I wanted to make sure that the trend was still going the same, so I threw 68 throws on it, but I based all the numbers on a 50 count. The percentages let you do that because you figure your percentage of what's over and under. With this Lyman 55, we ended up having a 7/10 spread from high to low. Let me get where I can read. I can't read in this camera. 36% were right on the money. 30% were low by 3/10. 34% were high by 3/10. Pretty even on both sides of it. So that means 18 out of 50, 18 out of a box were right on the money, and 15 were 3/10 low, 18 of them were 3/10 high. So that's the practical way of looking at that. And then same thing here. All these plots that I did came out pretty close first and second. But then, hey, you guys settle down a little bit. This one over here, we had quite a spread. I was surprised at that. Where was I? I think I was looking at the Brass Smith. 16 out of 50 came on right on the money. 6 of them were low by as much as 3/10 of a grain. 29 were overloaded by as much as 5/10. And that, like I said, had an 8/10 spread from high to low. But it's still not bad for handling that kind of powder. You got to really work with your scales whenever you got powder acting like this. You got to keep track of it. Toss out them real high ones or real low ones. With the lock and load, we had an 11/10 spread. I was just amazed at that. 25% of them came out right on the money. 59% were low by as much as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7/10, and 16% came out high as much as 3/10. So that's tell you right there, you don't use this measure here with 700X. So out of a box of 50, 12.5 of them would be right on the money. 29.5 would be as much as 7/10 low, and 8 of them would be high by as much as 3/10. So that's the numbers, boys. That's how I did it. I think it's a practical way of looking at it and interpreting the numbers. So there you go. Easy powder on the left, tough powder on the right. How does Brass Smith do? Well, it came in number 1 on the easy powder and number 2 on the tough powder. Thanks for watching, fellas.